Good afternoon. My name is Helen Folks, and I would like to welcome you to the Louisiana Department of Education Nutrition Support Training on the School Breakfast Program and Offer versus Serve. The outline of this training is based on the Louisiana Fit Kids Manager training on meal patterns with recent updates added for child nutrition program operators to make informed decisions as well as to reinforce the understanding of the school breakfast program and Offer versus Serve. Before we get started, I did want to mention that there is a state update that's scheduled for September 28th. You should go online and register at louisianafitkids.com. This is going to be, again, an in-person meeting that starts at 1 p.m. and it follows the Farm to School conference, with which many of you are probably interested in attending as well. So first up for our training is an overview of the 2018 final rule, which was vacated, which canceled menu flexibilities that were put in place for milk, whole grains, and sodium. It's important to understand that USDA is allowing for a transitional period for going back to that 2018 rescinded meal pattern. And that information will be provided and discussed after the overview of what is intended as an end goal for the child nutrition program meal patterns. Many of the waivers that were in place to allow flexibilities over the pandemic and COVID-19 in the menu pattern, they continued over the last couple of years, but are no longer in effect for school year 22-23. So you're going to see some of those flexibilities go away. With that in mind, and given the challenges of the pandemic and supply chain issues that are still affecting operations, a transitional meal pattern has been developed by USDA to allow for time in the development of guidelines, which will replace the vacated 2018 final rule meal pattern. So many of the considerations of what is currently going on with supply chain issues and other challenges are being considered by USDA in the development of new guidelines that will go into place. To explain the reason for the elimination of menu flexibilities, on April 13th, 2020, the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland found a procedural error with the promulgation of the 2018 final rule for child nutrition programs. This previously allowed meal pattern flexibilities for milk, whole grains, and sodium requirements. As a result of that vacated rule, these flexibilities were canceled. But as you'll see in the next slide, there are some transitional standards that will help bridge the gap for what we're experiencing during these unprecedented times. Okay, so USDA designed the Child Nutrition Program transitional standards for milk, whole grains, and sodium to for school year 22-23 and 23-24 to give schools time to transition in the short term. Meanwhile, again, USDA is working to develop long-term nutrition standards based on the newest dietary guidelines for Americans and extensive input from a wide range of partners that will, these are things that will work for schools, they work for families and industry alike. USDA expects to publish a proposed rule on the updated standards this fall of 2022. What this means for this current school year is that flavored milk may be low fat or 1%. In addition, unflavored milk must be offered and may be either fat-free or 1% fat. In terms of sodium, the weekly levels for breakfast and lunch will remain the same as the target 1 sodium levels for the current school year of 2022-2023. The final transitional standard requirements for whole grains includes that at least 80% of the grains served in school lunch and breakfast over the course of the week must be whole grain. Now, just to step back for a minute in terms of sodium, we are projecting that for school year 23-24, there will be a marginal decrease in what is allowable for sodium levels for school lunch, but this is for school lunch only. So we're looking at a 10% decrease for next school year. So make sure that you include this in your planning for bids and specifications for next school year, and also take a look at those recipes, but even more importantly, any extras, condiments, those kinds of things that would add to the sodium at lunch. Um, to go back to the whole grain requirement, it's important to note that whole grain rich recipes will not have to necessarily change. The definition of whole grain rich remains that half or 50% of the grain offered in a product is whole grain rich, while the other half may be regular white enriched grain. So essentially, most of your recipes and products do not have to change. What the 80% rule means in practice is that if you are offering 10 ounces of grain per week as a 2-ounce portion of grain per day, then on 1 day per week, a 2-ounce portion of grain may be enriched white grain. The rest of the grain offered over the course of the week must be whole grain rich in this scenario. This would be an option whether you decide to use the 2-ounce per week whole grain flexibility to allow for certain preferences like gumbo with white rice to be offered, if that happens to be a student acceptability issue, or if it is simply an allowance when taking into consideration challenges experienced intermittently with deliveries as a result of supply chain issues. When a substitute item that is not whole grain rich is provided, this will allow that item to be served once during that week as a 2-ounce portion while still meeting whole grain rich transitional standards for the child nutrition program meal patterns. And now, like was previously discussed, we do know that there are substitutions that are provided in deliveries, and sometimes that may exceed that 2-ounce portion that you're allowed if you're serving 2 ounces per day at lunch, 2 ounces per day at breakfast. So with that in mind, please make sure that you document these delivery substitutions or issues, because that will assist you during a review process in terms of justifying that there was a circumstance that occurred with deliveries that was not avoidable. Okay, so let's go over the meal pattern basics. And at breakfast, we always emphasize that there are 3 components that must be offered on the serving line every day. And those things include milk, grain, and fruit. Now, many of you are probably thinking, well, where's the egg? Where's the turkey bacon? Where's the sausage? Well, the meat alternate and vegetable components are not part of the breakfast meal pattern. But while that is true, if you have a meat alternate and you already have 1 grain already provided or 1 ounce of grain, then you may add a meat alternate as that 2nd ounce or 2nd portion toward the meal pattern. All 3 components must be available to all children who come through the serving line. That means the first child in line and the last child in line must have all options available from these food components. So when we talk about food items, a food item is a specific food that is offered to meet the component requirement. In this slide, strawberries are the food item being served to meet the fruit component requirement. Toast is the food item offered to meet the grain component, and milk is the food item offered as the milk component. Note that meat alternates are not a required component in the school breakfast program, but may be added as a grain component after the initial 1 ounce grain or 1 serving of grain is provided. So let's discuss the difference between ounce equivalents versus ounces. So let's start with ounces. And 1 physical ounce generally weighs 28 grams. This holds true no matter what item is being measured, whether it's metal, feathers, clay, dirt, plastic, clothing, or food. If you have 1 physical ounce of something, it weighs 28 grams. Many of you probably already know this from weighing products for recipes. However, when we say how much meat a food item contributes to the meat alternate component, we can't always use what we see physically here as ounces. For some meat alternate foods, it takes either more are less than 1 physical ounce to provide a 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. So if you think about a chicken nugget that is made of chicken and coated in breading, if you weigh that nugget, the weight includes the amount of meat and the amount of grain and other ingredients, including breading. So the actual lean meat in that product is going to be a lot less, and there comes in where you do have to look at other crediting information to determine how much meat is in that product for meeting component requirements. So look at this example of a grilled chicken patty. The patty weighs 3.8 ounces. Note that the crediting information provides that a 3 ounce equivalent meat alternate is provided for every chicken patty. So 0.8 ounces of this product does not credit as meat or meat alternate for the child nutrition program. So why would you think this is the case? Well, the reason that it credits as only 3 ounces of meat alternate is because the manufacturer added other ingredients such as water, cornstarch, salt, and vinegar. Those ingredients weigh 0.8 ounces. Also remember that the percentage of fat in the meat will affect the yield or crediting. So when using fresh products, you want to use the food buying guide to determine the amount of raw product to purchase in order to serve a cooked product that meets crediting requirements for that meal. For example, an 80-20 or 80% lean and 20% fat product that's ground beef will credit less lean meat pound for pound than a 90-10 or 90% lean and 10% fat ground beef. So the more fat, the less credit you're going to get for that lean meat. This slide lists some food items that are frequently used to meet the meat alternate component, along with the serving size of the food item needed to count as 1 ounce equivalent of meat. For actual meat, which includes beef, chicken, pork, and fish, it typically only takes 1 ounce of meat to equal 1 ounce equivalent. Now, we discussed a lot about how you do need to use the food buying guide to determine the yield for these different products based on the description and based on the percentage of fat. If you weighed a piece of cooked meat, a 1 ounce piece would typically equal a 1 ounce equivalent serving for the child nutrition program, but you would not be able to include bone, skin, or breading when weighing that meat. Things like cheese, nuts, and seeds are the same in terms of 1 physical ounce of cheese, nuts, or seeds equals 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. Now, what about peanut butter or sunflower seed butter? Well, it would take 2 tablespoons of that type of butter to provide a 1 ounce equivalent serving of meat alternate. It takes 1/4 cup of beans without their liquid to get 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. Now, once that's cooked, it's going to be a much larger portion, typically a 1/2 cup portion. And we'll talk a little bit more about beans and their crediting when we get to the National School Lunch Program and how to credit that later on this week. It takes 1/2 of a large egg to equal 1 ounce equivalent of meat, and it takes 1/2 cup yogurt to provide 1 ounce equivalent of meat. A 1/2 cup of yogurt typically weighs over 100 grams, so it takes a much heavier portion of yogurt to give us just that 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. Remember we said earlier that meat alternate is not a required component of breakfast. However, meat can be credited to meet the grain component at breakfast, but first, the menu must include at least 1 ounce equivalent of an actual bread or grain. So what's really nice is if you served a sausage biscuit for breakfast, you would count the serving of bread grain first as 1 ounce, and then the meat alternate from the sausage would count toward that grain component. So the same thing would be the case with eggs and toast. The key is that you have to have 1 ounce of grain on the menu before you can count any meat toward the total grains for that breakfast menu. You can't just have meat and then no actual bread grain. Next, we will go over the grain component. And remember that grain is a required meal pattern component for breakfast. And all grains that are served should be whole grain rich Now, just remember with the transitional standards that the guideline is 80% must be whole grain rich. So by USDA definition, for a product to be considered whole grain rich, at least 50% of the grain must be whole grain and the rest of the grain must be enriched. Food items that are used to meet the grain component can be divided into two categories. That would be baked goods and cereal grains. Baked goods include breads, buns, biscuits, crackers, chips, and taco shells made with whole corn, tortillas, cornbread, cinnamon rolls, and other items. Cereal grains include rice, pasta, hot cereal, and dry cereal. Even though we call them cereal grains, they aren't all what we would commonly think of as breakfast cereal. So a good reference to this would be the food buying guide and the Exhibit A grain chart that we'll go over in more detail later. Occasionally there is confusion about potato products because outside of the school meals program, potato products are commonly thought of as starches. Sometimes this makes people want to count them toward the grain component, but potato products never count toward grains. It's actually a vegetable. Things like mashed potatoes, French fries, hash browns are vegetables and can be used to meet the vegetable component. We'll talk more a little bit about how to do that for breakfast. Similar to meat alternates, we measure the serving size of grain food items in ounces. We have to use ounce equivalents because sometimes it takes either more or less than 1 physical ounce of a grain food item to equal a 1 ounce equivalent serving of grain. If the grain item we are serving contains only that grain and has no other added ingredients, 1 physical ounce of the product is a 1 ounce equivalent serving of grain. Dry cereal grains such as rice, pasta, grits, oatmeal, and dry breakfast cereals with no extra ingredients like marshmallows can be measured like this because in their dry form, they do not contain any other ingredient. But what about things like baked goods, such as breads, biscuits, buns, crackers, cornbread, cinnamon rolls, and taco shells? Well, these products generally aren't made of just grain alone. The grain is mixed with other ingredients such as sugar, baking powder, oil, dry milk, etc. So how do you know how many ounce equivalents of grains these foods will count as? Well, you can't just tell by weighing them or looking at the weight on the label. If the food item has a child nutrition label or CN label, the label will tell you how many ounce equivalents of grain the food item provides. Some examples of some processed items that would provide this information include things like toaster pastries, chicken nuggets, and pizza. A standardized recipe will usually also tell you how many ounce equivalents of grain the food item provides. But what about if the product is something like sliced bread, a pre-made roll or biscuit, a taco shell, and does not have a CN label or a statement? In those cases, you can look up the product on a chart made by USDA, or it can be located by looking up the Exhibit A grain requirements for child nutrition programs. When completing production records, make sure to write the serving size of bread products in ounce equivalents, such as 2 ounce equivalent whole grain rich roll, and the serving size for rice and pasta in cups, such as 1/2 cup of rice. This is what the Exhibit A grain requirements for child nutrition programs looks like. There are additional footnotes that are not included on this page. You may access the Exhibit A chart by clicking the link title on this slide. Note that when using this chart, you will use the middle column for crediting information for school meals. You will notice that grains are grouped based on how they credit per ounce of product weight. Items in group G, like toaster pastries and cereal bars, credit at a lower ounce equivalent per ounce of product weight than something like bread. For example, a whole grain toaster pastry requires a 2 ounce product weight to credit for 1 ounce equivalent bread grain, while a slice of whole grain bread will credit for 1 ounce equivalent based on a 1 ounce product weight. Fruit is another component that is part of both the breakfast and lunch meal patterns. Food items that may be used to meet the fruit requirement include fresh fruit, frozen fruit without added sugar, fruit cannon juice, light syrup, or water. Dried fruit, such as raisins or dried cranberries, also count toward the fruit component, and fruit juice counts toward the juice component. And just remember, if juice is served, it must be 100% juice. It cannot be a product that is a juice blend or a punch unless it is a fruit punch made with 100% juice. No more than half of the weekly fruit requirement can be made up of juice. So fruit has additional benefits such as fiber that juice does not have. So it is important that students are given fruit and not just juice as an option. All schools have to offer 1 cup of fruit component each morning at breakfast. And when I say 1 cup of fruit component, I mean that's a combination of fruit and or juice. So a school could give the student 1 cup of solid fruit, being canned, fresh, or frozen fruit every day and no juice. But a school could not give the student 1 cup of fruit juice every day. So basically, what I typically see is a plan where there is at breakfast 1/2 cup of some type of solid fruit, being canned, fresh, or frozen, and then 1/2 cup of 100% juice offered. That way the 50% requirement is never exceeded and the students still have a choice every day. The serving size of fruit is always measured in cups. So to figure out the serving size of the fruit item, you can use the CN label for a few pre-made products such as frozen fruit juice pops. Typically, you will use the food buying guide. And for example, if you were serving a whole banana at 150 count per case, the food buying guide would tell us that the amount of fruit each banana would provide is 1/2 cup. Now just make sure that you pay attention to the count per case when ordering fruit, because that makes a big difference in terms of making sure that that credits as a 1/2 cup or less than 1/2 cup. So if you are writing this food item on a production record, you might write 1 each and put in parentheses 1/2 cup. Most fruit servings credit as the actual volume served, meaning if you provide 1/2 cup of sliced pears, it credits as 1/2 cup of fruit. Dried fruits are different than other fruit because they credit as twice the volume served. So if raisins were on the menu to provide a student with a 1/2 cup equivalent of fruit component, you would only serve the student 1/4 cup of raisins. The vegetable component is part of the lunch meal pattern, but vegetables are not a separate component at breakfast. However, vegetables may be used to meet the fruit component at breakfast. So items such as salsa, hash browns, or vegetable juice may count toward the fruit component. If vegetable juice is offered, it counts as part of the weekly juice limit. So know that no more than 50% or half of the component over the course of the week can be provided as juice. The serving size of vegetables is always measured in cups. To figure out the serving size of the vegetable item, you would typically use the food buying guide. Occasionally, a pre-made product containing vegetables may have a CN label, and I have seen this on some of the vegetable juice products. Most fruit servings credit as the actual volume served, meaning if you provide 1/2 cup of canned corn, it credits as 1/2 cup of vegetable. Raw leafy salad greens are different than other vegetables because they credit as half the volume served. So if romaine lettuce was on the menu to provide a student with 1/2 cup of vegetable component, you must serve the student 1 physical cup of romaine lettuce. The minimal creditable serving of vegetables is 1/8 cup. 1 cup of milk or 8 fluid ounces must be offered to all students in all grade levels at breakfast and lunch every day. Just remember that 2% milk and whole milk are not allowed in any flavor or as unflavored milk as part of the school breakfast and school lunch program. Students must be given at least 2 options to choose from at each meal service for milk. However, remember that the first option must be unflavored milk. When offering the 2 milk options that must be served, you make sure that you have either the fat-free or 1% unflavored milk, and then next, flavored milk may be offered, most commonly being strawberry or chocolate milk, which may be fat-free or 1% during the transitional meal pattern period. As a reminder, fluid milk is the only food item that may be used to meet the milk component. Other food items that are considered dairy items, such as eggs, cheese, and even yogurt, will not meet the milk component. What component group these dairy food these dairy food items belong to? Well, these items belong in the meat alternate group and must be credited based on the food buying guide. Okay, so a separate category, which is other foods, are foods that do not meet any component requirements. They may be used as condiments and seasonings, and they can improve student acceptability or participation in meal services. But it's important to remember that these are sources of calories, often saturated fat, and sodium, which must be counted in weekly nutrient averages. There is a list of other foods in the USDA Food Buying Guide that is linked on this slide. Notice that pork bacon is not considered meat on this list of other foods and does not count toward the meat alternate component at lunch, nor the grain component at breakfast. This is because there is little protein in bacon and it is made primarily of fat. So if bacon is served with any meal, it must be considered an extra item. Bacon has a lot of calories, fat, and sodium too. So it typically can't even be served as an extra since there are weekly calorie, fat, and sodium limits for each meal pattern. So do keep in mind, we do have, turkey bacon that we offer. Those are typically CN labeled or they have a product formulation statement. They typically are a lot lower in saturated fat and lower in sodium and are perfectly fine for the program. Remember that these items overall, in terms of other foods, may affect the nutritional content of meals and the dietary specification outcome during the administrative review. So use care to ensure that balanced menus are provided in terms of nutritional content on average over each week, and to ensure that fat, sodium, and calories will not exceed USDA guidelines when these other foods are added to menus. When making substitutions for failed deliveries of certain food items, make sure you substitute within the same component group. When it comes to vegetables, be sure, this is a reference to lunch, but be sure to substitute within the same vegetable subgroup. So when we take a look at this, if it's a fruit item, we want to substitute with another fruit. If it's a grain, we want to substitute with another grain. If it's fluid milk, we substitute with fluid milk, vegetable to vegetable, and meat alternate to make sure that all components are present to ensure that that's a reimbursable meal. Next, let's take a dive into offer versus serve and meeting the requirements for reimbursable meal selections in the school breakfast program. To review the basics of the breakfast meal program, the breakfast meal pattern, 3 components are required, including milk, grain, and fruit. The components have minimum daily and weekly serving size requirements. Meat may be offered and will contribute to the grain component at breakfast after a 1-ounce grain portion is offered in a school breakfast menu. At breakfast, there are 4 grade group categories: K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and K through 12. Many schools that have multiple grade levels use the K through 12 meal pattern at breakfast because it means you can offer all students the same serving sizes. For the fruit group, which may also be met with vegetable items, each grade level must be offered 1 cup of fruit, including juice, on the serving line at breakfast each day. For the milk group, the serving size is also 1 cup for all grades each day. In the grains group, the minimum daily serving size is the same each day, or 1 ounce equivalent. That means that every day all students must be offered at least 1 ounce of grain. But remember, there are also weekly grain minimums. So for the K through 5 group, these students must be offered a minimum of 7 ounce equivalent of grain during the week. If they were only offered the minimum daily requirement of 1 ounce equivalent each day, they would only get 5 ounces of grain for the week. This would not be enough to meet the weekly requirement. Therefore, students must be offered more than 1 ounce equivalent of grain several days during the week. Frequently, students are all offered a minimum of 2 ounce equivalent of grain each day to ensure that both the daily and weekly minimums are met. Grades 6 through 8 have a minimum serving requirement of 8 ounce equivalent of grain per week, and grades 9 through 12, as well as the K through 12 group, have a minimum of 9 ounce equivalent of grain per week. Again, because these serving sizes among all components are so similar across the grade groups, a K through 12 grade group may be used. There are also weekly calories, saturated fat, and sodium limits for menus, which you see at the bottom of this table. When the menu's nutrients are averaged over the course of the week, grades K through 5 should have between 350 and 500 calories per day. Less than 10% of the calories should come from saturated fat, and the menu should have less than 540 milligrams of sodium. The K through 5 grade group meal pattern was discussed to provide direction on how to read the meal pattern chart. When you have time, please take time to review the 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and K through 12 meal patterns in order to be familiar with the grade group options and requirements for breakfast. Okay, so at breakfast, in addition to the food component requirements, there are also food item requirements. You have to have 3 components on the serving line every day and 4 food items on the serving line for breakfast. Each 1/2 cup of fruit can be counted as an item, and each ounce of grain can be counted as an item, even if they are in one physical piece of food. It is up to the person who plans the menu to decide whether food such as a 2-ounce muffin will be counted as 2 items or as 1 item. Usually, a menu planner is going to count every 1/2 cup of fruit and ounce of grain as an item, but they don't have to as long as there are a minimum of 4 items on the line. In this example, we have 1/2 cup strawberries, which is 1 item, 1/2 cup of juice, which is 1 item, and this meets the 1 cup fruit component. Because these are counted as 1 item each, we have 2 items in the fruit component. We have a 1 ounce slice of toast, which is 1 item, and 1 cup of milk, which is 1 item. Therefore, we have a total of 4 food items from 3 different components. In this example, we have an apple that counts as 1 cup of fruit. We know this because we looked it up in the food buying guide. Apples and other fresh fruits are typically credited by the count per case. Apples with a higher count per case yield a smaller serving size, while a smaller count per case will yield a larger serving size. In this situation, each 1/2 cup of fruit in the apple counts as 1 item, so we have 2 fruit items available in this menu just with the 1 apple. We now have 2 pieces of toast that each weigh 1 ounce, so we have 2 grain items. We also have 1 cup of milk, which counts as 1 item, for a total of 5 food items in 3 components. In this example of a breakfast meal pattern, 1/2 an apple, which is 1/2 cup, counts as 1 food item. 1/2 cup juice equals 1 item. 2 pieces of toast would count as 2 separate food items, and then 1 cup of milk equals 1 item. So we have a total of 5 food items and 3 components. In this example, we have a 2-ounce muffin instead of toast. We still have 5 food items because each ounce equivalent of grain can count as 1 food item. Therefore, even though we have 4 physical pieces of food, we have 5 food items available for this breakfast. Now you'll want to take a note that this muffin would actually be larger, typically in ounces, in order to credit as a 2-ounce portion than just weigh a total of 2 ounces. That's because in the Exhibit A grain chart that we talked about, muffins do have to weigh quite a bit more in order to yield a 1-ounce portion or ounce per ounce portion due to added ingredients. So make sure that you do pay attention to that Exhibit A grain chart when crediting something like a muffin. In our last example, we have a whole apple, a 2-ounce muffin, and milk, which means we have 3 physical pieces of food. But let's count how many food items are counted here. Each 1/2 cup of apple counts as 1 item, so we have 2 fruit items. Each ounce of grain counts as 1 item, so we have 2 grain items. And we have 1 milk item. So it looks like we have 3 food items if you're just counting it, but actually we have a total of 5 food items. This is something just to make sure that everyone understands at the beginning of the serving line. When discussing the meal pattern requirements, how many components are present, how many food items are present, and how to conduct offer versus serve in this situation. So let's talk a little bit about offer versus serve for a moment. Offer versus serve is a concept that applies to menu planning and meal services. It allows students to decline some of the food offered in a reimbursable breakfast. The goals of offer versus serve are to reduce food waste and permit students to choose the food that they want to eat. Your local system will decide whether to use the offer versus serve provision for breakfast. If your school system utilizes offer versus serve at breakfast, the school will implement the guidelines you are learning about in this module. USDA does not require any schools or grade levels to participate in offer versus serve at breakfast. However, many schools choose to implement OVS at breakfast because of the food waste benefit. Offer versus serve requires students to take a minimum of 3 food items at breakfast, and one of those food items must be 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable. So we're going to do an offer versus serve skills review. So as we go through this, you'll want to look at each menu. You'll pay close attention to the grade level and serving sizes. Look at each student meal. You will only have a few seconds to determine if it is a complete meal because we're trying to simulate what it would be like on the food service line. So first, as you go through this activity, ask yourself if the student picked up 1/2 cup fruit minimum. Next, ask if 2 additional food items were selected for a total of 3 items. If yes, the meal is complete. You would check reimbursable on a sheet of paper next to the number, and otherwise check not reimbursable. After completing each section, I will go over the answers. So let's test our skills. So breakfast menu number 1. This is what's offered to students, and it includes a 2-ounce whole grain rich bagel, which counts as 2 items, 1/2 cup fresh orange wedges, which counts as 1 item, 1/2 cup banana, which counts as 1 item, and 1 cup of milk, which counts as 1 item. This gives us a total of 5 food items and meets the USDA meal pattern requirements for the school breakfast program in terms of the 3 components that must be offered. Next, we'll start on the meal selections the students picked up from menu number 1, and we'll assess the tray and decide if this is a reimbursable breakfast that's been picked up or not. Remember, as we go through these slides, to first check to see if the student picked up 1/2 cup fruit, and next for a minimum of 2 full items that are selected. So after you add up the 1/2 cup fruit and 2 additional 2 full items, you have a total of 3 food items selected. The key to offer versus serve is to check for those 3 items, with one of those items being 1/2 cup portion of fruit or vegetable in place of fruit. Student number 1 selected 1/2 cup orange slices and a 2-ounce bagel. So write down under number 1, is that a reimbursable breakfast that the student selected? Student number 2 selected a cup of milk and a 2-ounce bagel. So under number 2, document, is this a reimbursable breakfast meal? Student number 3 selected 1 cup of milk, a 1/2 cup of banana, and a 2-ounce bagel. Is number 3 a reimbursable breakfast? Student number 4 selected 1 cup milk and 1/2 cup orange slices. Is number 4 a reimbursable breakfast? Student number 5 picked up 1 cup milk, a 1/2 cup banana, and 1/2 cup oranges. Is this a reimbursable breakfast? So we went through that quickly, but we're going to go over answers thoroughly in the next slides. Okay, under number 1, the student picked up the 1/2 cup orange wedges, which meets our requirement for 1/2 cup fruit. And each ounce of the bagel counts as 1 item. So the 2-ounce bagel actually counts as 2 additional food items. So this menu contains 3 food items with the required 1/2 cup fruit. And this is a reimbursable breakfast. So student number 2, they picked up 3 items, including a 2-ounce bagel, counting as 2 items, and 1 cup milk. However, think about, what should our first question be? Did the student pick up 1/2 cup fruit or 1/2 cup of some type of vegetable in place of a fruit? And the answer is no. So without that 1/2 cup fruit or substitute vegetable, this meal is not reimbursable. Now at the point of service, I've noticed that typically the point of service clerk will keep something close by, like 1/2 cup fruit juice iced down, or maybe some fresh fruit, in order to complete that meal quickly and keep the meal going. So in this instance, if the student picked up the 1/2 cup juice at the end of the line, the reimbursable meal could be counted and the rest of the line could move along. So the third student picked up the 1/2 cup fruit as the banana, and the 2-ounce bagel counted as 2 food items along with 1 cup of milk. So here we have 4 items total, including 1/2 cup fruit. So this meal is reimbursable. So this meal includes 1/2 cup fruit as orange wedges. So we can check that off the list. But how many other additional items were selected? And it's only the 1 cup of milk. So we're looking for an additional item here. We don't have that third item. The total number of items selected is 2, and we need that student to pick up 1 additional item to meet the requirements for a reimbursable meal. So student number 5 picked up the minimum 1/2 cup fruit. We have a 1/2 cup orange wedges and a 1/2 cup banana. That provides 2 food items. And the 1 cup portion of milk is the third item. So this is a reimbursable meal. Okay, so let's take a look at our next breakfast menu. This is what's being offered on the serving line. So we have an English muffin that has a 1/2 an egg, 0.5 ounces of cheese, and 0.5 ounces of ham. We have mixed fruit that is 2 items and a milk choice that is 1 item. So take a look at that egg English muffin sandwich, and that's going to give you a total of 4 items. But when looking at that, if a student were only to pick up that one sandwich, what would they be missing? And that would be that 1/2 cup fruit or substitute vegetable. So just remember that as we go through our offer versus serve quiz. So student 1 picks up a 2-ounce English muffin and they pick up 1 cup of milk. Is this a reimbursable breakfast? Student number 2 picks up a full cup of mixed fruit and the English muffin sandwich. Is this meal reimbursable? This third student picks up 1 cup of milk and 1 cup of mixed fruit. Is this a reimbursable breakfast? Let's check our answers. So this first student picked up the English muffin sandwich, which counts as several items. And they also picked up milk. So they have more than the 3 items that are required, but what are they missing? They're missing the fruit or substitute vegetable requirement at a 1/2 cup portion. So this is not reimbursable. Student number 2 picks up 1/2 cup fruit minimum, and actually this is a full cup portion. So this is an additional item. So this fruit cup counts as 2 food items, plus we have the English muffin, and we have exceeded our 3 items that are required, plus the 1/2 cup fruit. Student number 3 picked up the minimum 1/2 cup fruit. The fruit cup is a 1 cup serving and counts as 2 items. The third item is 1 cup of milk. So this meal is reimbursable. Okay, so our breakfast menu number 3 that is offered on the serving line is a strawberry smoothie, and the strawberry smoothie is going to count as 2 items. And something that's nice with this smoothie is it's a 1/2 cup strawberries and 1/2 cup yogurt. The corn muffin offered is 1 item. The orange wedges at a 1/2 cup count as 1 item, and the milk choice counts as 1 item. Student number 1 picks up a 1-ounce corn muffin, a strawberry smoothie. Is this a reimbursable breakfast? Student number 2 picks up a 1/2 cup of orange wedges plus a strawberry smoothie. Is this reimbursable? Student number 3 picks up only the strawberry smoothie with 1/2 cup strawberries and 1/2 cup yogurt. Is that reimbursable? So let's go through and check our answers. So student number 1, they picked up a 1/2 cup fruit in the smoothie, which is strawberries, a 1/2 cup yogurt, which is 1 ounce meat alternate. The meat alternate counts as 1 bread grain because the corn muffin counted first as a bread grain. The smoothie and the corn muffin equal 3 items. So this is a reimbursable meal. So this student picked up the strawberry smoothie and they picked up 1/2 cup of oranges. So they did pick up their 3 items and they did include their 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable. So that meal is reimbursable. Now the third student only picked up the smoothie. And so there is fruit at a 1/2 cup in the smoothie and a 1/2 cup yogurt, but that only counts as 2 food items. So we have 1 fruit and we have 1 meat. We're just missing 1 item. So this meal is not reimbursable. So I'm hoping everyone did really well on this offer versus serve quiz. I'm going to take a chance to look at the chat box to see if there are any questions. Please, if you have any questions right now, go ahead and put it in chat, and I'll give you just a couple of minutes to do that so I can make sure that any questions are answered. If you do, after this session, decide that you have some questions about school breakfast, the school breakfast program and the transitional meal pattern standards, please contact the Louisiana Department of Education Office of Nutrition Support at Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov or by phone at 225-342-9661. So I'm going to mute just for a couple of minutes to give everybody time to input any questions. Okay, so just continue to think of any questions that you want to put in. I haven't had any questions come through so far. I did want to remind everybody to please sign up for the September 28th state update. You can register on louisianafitkids.com, and it will follow the Farm to School conference that's being provided in person at Pennington. So now that we are concluding the school breakfast program in terms of meal pattern and offer versus serve, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that you do get credit for today's webinar. So make sure that you do log these hours or this 1 hour. And thank you to everyone for your time and attention during the training. Again, if you have any questions, contact Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov or 225-342-9661. And have a wonderful afternoon. I thank you so much for your time.